look at transposing a linear equation. And transposing a linear equation means we are rearranging that equation. So by the end of the video, our success criteria is going to be whether you can transpose a linear equation. So if you are given a linear equation containing two or more separate variables, you are able to transpose or rearrange that relationship to form a new equation. That is, one of the variables on the right-hand side of the equation can become the standalone variable on the left-hand side of the equation. So you are using the original equation to come up with a separate new equation, still containing all the same variables, but making one of the other variables the subject of that equation. And you've already used this in practice with Pythagoras. We've got the standard a squared plus b squared equals c squared, but you also know that that can be rearranged, and you can use a squared equals c squared minus b squared when you are finding a non-hypotenuse side of the right angled triangle. So this is something that you've already used and already seen used. So the purpose of this is to teach you how can you go ahead and transpose a linear equation. So you move a number or a variable over the other side of the equation by completing the opposite operation or the inverse operation. So we've got our original operations. It can be adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, square root, or doing a square or to the power of another number. And the transposed operation for adding, the opposite of adding is going to be subtracting. And for subtracting, the opposite of subtracting is adding. For multiplying, the opposite operation is going to be divide. And for dividing, the opposite operation is multiplying. The opposite of square rooting a number is squaring that number. The opposite of squaring the number is doing the square root. And if we had a variable to the power of a number other than 2, the opposite of doing that is finding that number, the indices value root of that number. So a to the power of 4, the transposed operation is going to be the fourth root of a. So if you have more than one number or one variable that you need to transpose, you transpose each number or variable one at a time, and you do it in reverse BIDMAS order. So we all remember BIDMAS from when we were in primary school. That told us our order of operations, that first we do brackets, then we do indices, division, multiplication, adding and subtracting. But when we are transposing a linear equation, we do the reverse order. So for linear equations, we start off, and if we've got any adding or subtracting, we transpose those operations first. Then we do division, multiplication, indices, and brackets last. So a little bit different to what we're used to. We got to remember when we're doing transposing linear equations, we are doing the opposite order. So let's have a look at some examples. In the first example, we've got y equals 4x plus 7, or 4x plus 7 equals y, and we want to transpose that and make x the subject. So having a look, I've got a 4x plus a 7, and I want to transpose that side of the equation until I get x by itself. So multiplication and addition, doing my reverse BIDMAS order, I'm going to start off with my plus 7, and I want to remove plus 7 from that left-hand side. To do that, I am going to do the opposite, which is subtract 7. So I need to subtract 7 from both sides. On my left-hand side, I'm going to be left with 4x, and on my right-hand side, it's going to be y minus 7. So that was my first step. My second step is going to be look at 4x, and at the moment I'm multiplying x by 4. The opposite of multiplying by 4 is going to be divide by 4. So to keep my equation balanced, I want to divide by 4 on both sides. So that leaves me with x on my left-hand side is equal to y minus 7 divided by 4. So that is an example of how I can transpose an equation. Transposing a linear equation is covered in more detail in the next couple of lessons. So skip ahead to exercise 5.2 if you want some more examples of how to rearrange or how to transpose a linear equation.